Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Volcan Azul, natural processed Costa Rica from the barn. And there's the bag right there. And the barn, based out of Berlin, Germany, and this is their first time appearing on this channel, and the first time any German coffee roaster has appeared on this channel. They were a suggestion to us by Tim Tam Jimmy, so shout out to and thank you to Tim Tam Jimmy for the suggestion. And the barn is a coffee roaster I have a fair bit of familiarity with myself, as for many years there was a coffee shop in Colorado that used the barn quite regularly, as the owner of the cafe was a huge fan of the barn, most notably their natural processed coffees. So I got an opportunity to try quite a few of their coffees, but it has been several years since I've had any of their coffees. Knew at some point we were going to go back and review one of their coffees, but this was a perfect opportunity to kind of expedite that process, as they were a suggestion to us, and they were a coffee being offered by the Coffee Vine during their coffee subscription. So pulled the trigger, purchased their coffee, even if this coffee is definitely one of the least our profile sounding coffees, just to kind of refamiliarize ourselves with this coffee roaster. And at some point in the future, we're going to be trying something that is definitely more our flavor profile than this coffee was right here, but great opportunity, took the opportunity. Looking forward to discussing this coffee. This right here is day 28 of this coffee. And recipe on the barn's website, because they do have a brew guide, is a 15.15 to 1 water to coffee ratio at 94 degrees Celsius, which I believe translates to roughly 201 degrees Fahrenheit. We brewed it through the Chemex and the automatic coffee maker. Honestly, I think I like it a little bit more through the automatic coffee maker. Today it's through the automatic coffee maker. And roast profile is kind of interesting. I know the barn typically tends to roast a little lighter, but this coffee right here is an omni roast, so I believe it's a little bit more developed than what they typically do. So for purposes of this video, we'll call it a light medium European for the roast profile, and let's start discussing the coffee. Day 15, first opportunity to try it, and was really surprised by the reaction of this coffee as a whole. It was a very interesting first impression, as the aroma was this kind of alcoholic fermentation that's been experienced through so many coffees this year, and the cup itself was kind of this near cognac brandy-like experience, as it was kind of this light alcoholic body, but at the same time it produced these kind of lingering, more spirit-like notes. So it was this kind of vanilla-like finish to it. I was kind of impressed, actually, because for something that was so kind of alcoholic forward, something that I didn't necessarily think I was going to enjoy, it was just a unique experience. So rolled with it, thought it was pretty decent on our first impression. Day 18 went back and could definitely still see and experience a fair bit of that natural fermented taste to it. There is a fair bit of fruitiness as the tertiary component in this cup of coffee. Alcoholic component was definitely the most prominent, encompassed by this both vanilla and woody finish. And again, can't help but describe this as a spirit. Cognac, brandy sort of spirit. Very interesting still. Day 20, the coffee is essentially really heavy and intense. So it's quite strong. This is when we brewed it through the barn's recipe for the first time, and it was super bold and super strong. Some typical Central American characteristics that you might expect, with a slight bit of nuttiness and slight bit of chocolatey components in this cup as well. Day 22, again, can't help but emphasize that the coffee is acting like this higher end spirit just as a whole. It's very rich in depth, and when we brewed it through the automatic coffee maker, we were liking it slightly better. It had this alcoholic nature in the coffee that, I mean, we've been discussing quite a bit, but it was still very strong, and I think it was just kind of getting stronger the more days we were letting it rest. So interesting cup of coffee, kind of strange cup of coffee as a whole to this point. Day 24, brewed it again through the automatic coffee maker, and again, I think we were just liking it best through this method, and it was still kind of growing on me, which was kind of interesting, because for a coffee that at no point was my flavor profile, I think I was just really intrigued by the way that this coffee was acting. It was a little bit more toned down on this day, quite a bit of a lasting finish still, and a very distinct fruit flavor. And this is going to be kind of fun because they listed it as fig, and I actually have never had a fig in my life. I don't believe so. I mean, I've had plenty of fig Newtons, but I don't necessarily know what a fig tastes like. When I was looking at the tasting wheel to see where they charted the figs, they charted it right here in the dried fruit, somewhere between the berry and the chocolate. So even though it's technically a flower, which I found kind of interesting, I charted it accordingly with the berry, but I can definitely see it kind of being on this part of the tasting wheel as being a little bit more of this, I don't know, berry chocolatey sort of taste to it. Yeah, for whatever that's worth. And then day 26, back through the Chemex, and there was very little change, just this very strong lingering finish to it, kind of zesty vanilla chocolate. And the finish, again, still acting very much like this alcoholic berry. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. I think there's construction in the background. I think there's a beeping going on. But anyway, things that will jump out at the tasting wheel. Of course, the thing that will jump out the most is the finish. And I've been kind of harping on that. They list the flavor notes here as vanilla, dried fig, and intense. And again, I don't necessarily know what a dried fig tastes like, but the intensity in this coffee is very much there. It is a very lasting cup of coffee. It was one of those cups of coffee that we always say, would it justify a level 5? And in this case, it's definitely justified at that level 5. And then chocolate at level 4 and the berry fruit at level 4. And again, whatever dried fig, whatever category dried fig is technically supposed to go into, we just put it in the berry category because, again, don't know what a dried fig tastes like, but I think the fruit descriptor for this cup of coffee would say is a little bit more in line with a berry than any of the others. So the citrus fruit or the stone fruit. The stone fruit actually wouldn't say there was any in this cup of coffee. That's why it's at a level 1. But other things worth noting, sweetness level 3, acidity level 3, so kind of both medium in those categories. Florals pushed down to a level 2, even if technically the dried fig is a floral. So level 3, correction, level 2 for that one. Bitterness, yeah, it's kind of that alcoholic bitterness, kind of this strange spirit component to this cup of coffee. That's why it's a little higher than normal at that level 3. Smokiness level 2, maybe could have pushed that one up to a level 3, but I think we'll settle for a level 2 on that one. And body kind of lower, cleanliness pretty low. That's kind of to be expected for this cup of coffee. And I don't know if there's anything necessarily worth discussing other than that in this tasting wheel. All right, our overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. Just want to give a brief anecdote real quick. So we don't always drink every single cup of coffee and review them on this channel. So there was quite a few coffees we've had throughout this year, including this interesting Whoosh Whoosh from Proud Mary out in Portland that had this very similar experience to it. It was a very spirit-like cup of coffee that had these kind of lingering underneath spirit-like tastes to it. So this woodiness, this vanilla, this kind of complex spirit-like taste to it. And this is the coffee I could compare it to the most. And I was actually extremely impressed with that cup of coffee. Even though I don't like alcoholic cups of coffee as a whole, I was extremely impressed with the way that one acted. And this one was along the same sort of lines. So I was really impressed with this one, just not to the same extent I was with that one. So as a whole, I was impressed by the coffee, but there's no part of this coffee that I necessarily enjoyed, as none of it is my flavor profile. I mean, looking at this tasting wheel, it goes against a lot of what I typically tend to enjoy with coffees. And that's why I knew as soon as I tried this coffee for the first time that there was going to be something else from the barn. I needed to try something that was a lot more my flavor profile to get a little better representation of how I feel about the barn's coffees as a whole. So that was my impressions of this coffee, but there's definitely somebody I would suggest this coffee to, and I think it is somebody that does like their spirits, because the way that this coffee was acting was a little bit more in line with spirits than it was with coffee. These sort of spirit-like coffees are kind of unique and different, and I've experienced so few of them. The wine has been a common component throughout the year. I mean, the winey berry is very common, but kind of having a different sort of spirit-like berry coffee is interesting, unique, different, and I think that's why there are a lot of people that would like this coffee, and it will leave a kind of very intense, unique, out there sort of cup of coffee. And there are a lot of people that do enjoy the super intense cups of coffee. I'm not necessarily one of those people, but that's just kind of the overall impression I got from this coffee. Just kind of a strange coffee and kind of a strange review, but a fun one nonetheless. And I think I'm going to leave the review at that. If you have by chance had an opportunity to try any of the Barnes coffees, especially this Volcan Azul, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of them, as well as it as well. And again, we'll reiterate, we'll go back and try something a little bit more our flavor profile with the Barnes soon, so we can just get a more accurate representation of them for us. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Volcan Azul, natural processed Costa Rica from the barn. Thank you for watching.